Alright, I am back with another video, and today we are doing the all-wizard party build, part of my single-class build party series. Basically, long story short, this is the continuation of that series. We are making a full party using only the wizard class, and wizards were the most voted in the last video, which was the rangers. If you want to decide which class to focus on next for one of these videos, please leave a comment below, and the most upvoted comment or multiple comments with the most total upvotes will win. So for example, in the last video, there were 3 comments for druid, but the total amount of upvotes on each of those comments did not equal the same as the single comment voting for wizards. I think the 3 druid comments combined got to like 38 votes, whereas this one had like 42, so wizard wins. And so we're doing wizard today. Now, this video is going to be slightly different than my others, in which I suggest you check the description of this video, because at least once you're finished watching it, because normally in my build videos I go over early game equipment and like specific equipment for each slot and yada yada yada, but with 4 wizards and each of them having pretty similar power sets and would kind of all benefit from the same equipment, basically all of the equipment on these builds is interchangeable with the others, and to keep this video at a decent length, not going too long, any potential early game equipment has been listed in the description, as well as potential equipment that you could throw on any of these builds that isn't required for any of them, but could work on any of them. So things like rings and such, because there's not a lot of full spellcaster specific rings here, especially for wizards. But again, I have a list of like equipment that if it's not shown in the video, you could use here in the description. And also, of course, wizards themselves comes with an interesting kind of conundrum that's not actually come up in this series yet. Well, I guess with clerics it kind of did, but for wizards even more so, is that we have 8 subclasses compared for a party of 4. So basically picking and choosing what I wanted to use was somewhat difficult. I mean, I kind of looked at it at what makes each wizard unique. Obviously, I wanted to capture the essence of the wizard and the kind of things that we would typically see in wizards when it comes to D&D and by extension this game, but I also wanted to create 3 wizards that each played in a different playstyle. Not completely different, but definitely a different approach that can be rather unique to each of them. Especially that last build that you can see on the right there. That is probably one of the most unique builds I've ever done, and is probably one of my favourites. But we'll get to him a bit later. We're going to go in order from left to right. So, obviously, and again, I do have enough leftover subclasses to make another full party build video here. I could do a second wizard part, but I might leave that as kind of a bonus episode once the series is done. If you would like to see that, let me know. But again, creating 8 separate builds with no equipment overlap, all using the same class, was going to be very, very tricky to make interesting, and again, would make for an extremely long video. So I'm going to leave the classes that I didn't use in this video as a bonus episode, and just stay with these ones for now. So, without further ado, let's get into the builds. First up on our list is our human wizard here, who is an Evocation Wizard. I mean, come on, you all saw this coming. The stereotypical blaster caster who uses all sorts of evocation spells to basically just obliterate enemies, taking advantage of the various aspects of Evocation Wizards, such as spell sculpting, meaning that there are evocation spells that work in a radius. They're not going to hit our allies or ourselves, which is extremely important. Also, the ability later on in the class to add our intelligence modifier to the damage of our spells is huge. So here we go, like you say, there it is, empowered evocation, as well as things like potent cantrip, making our cantrips become harder to evade, so creatures still take half a cantrip's damage even if they succeed the saving throws. And there is sculpt spells as well. I'm playing as a human here, which technically gives you access to a few different things, but the races for these builds do not matter, just pick whatever you like for them. Basically, the whole idea of this build was to kind of focus on elemental casting, being able to use as many different damaging spells with many different elements as possible. Basically just giving you the kit needed to just nuke everything. But of course, as with these full party builds, I usually try to go for a feat on each build that is distinct, that can help kind of separate, you know, them from the other builds, give them a slightly different playstyle. And for this build, I decided to go with Spell Sniper. Because we're going to be attacking with so many different evocation spells that are offensive and require attack rolls, we might as well increase our chances to get a critical hit with any of them. And because we are taking Spell Sniper, we also do get a cantrip that is going to scale with our main spellcasting modifier, so I have also picked up Eldritch Blast to give us a force damage option. So now we pretty much have a cantrip for any situation, as well as the elemental spells that we have at our disposal. All of these builds, of course, will be using Mage Armour, because again, kind of sticking with that wizard theme, I wanted to use clothing, but again, picking certain races that come with armour proficiencies would allow you to use armour if you so choose, so that's entirely up to you. But again, I was quite happy to just go with Mage Armour here. In fact, I'll cast it now. Yep, can we turn around, please, Mr. Wizard? Okay, cool. Now we've walked and messed up my shot. There we go. So, overall, like I say, for the spells, you're going to kind of just... And again, for the most part, you probably are going to want to make a balanced kind of kit when it comes to your spell choices using any of these builds. But of course, I went all in, trying to stick to only spells from that aren't like essential to the build, like Mage Armor, kind of sticking to the chosen school of magic. So here we have pretty much all evocation spells. So things like Magic Missile, a Staple, Thunder Wave, Chromatic Orb, Firebolt, and Bone Chill for cantrips. We also have Shatter, Scorching Ray, Fireball, Melt's Acid Arrow, Lightning Bolt, Otterluke's Resilient Sphere. Did not know this was an evocation until this video, but that allows us to enclose a target in a sphere of shimmering force, blocking all incoming damage and spell attacks. The sphere reduces the target's movement speed by half and also prevents it from casting spells or dealing damage. Basically, make yourself pretty much immortal at the cost of not being able to do anything back, or completely take an enemy out of the fight for 3 turns as long as you can maintain concentration. Pretty good spell overall. It's a nice little control option that you wouldn't really expect on more of a blaster caster build, and since we don't have a lot of concentration things here, since we're mainly a blaster caster, like I said, this is a good thing to concentrate on just to kind of give yourself a little bit of an edge in combat against a particularly tough enemy. Next up, of course, we also have things like Ice Storm, Fire Shield, which is also a nice evocation spell. If people dare to get close enough to us, they're going to take a little bit of damage. But again, we don't really want that since we do have squishy mage HP. We also have things like Wall of Fire, Acid Splash, Sunbeam, Otterluke's Freezing Sphere, Chain Lightning, Cone of Cold. This build is all about just doing blast damage. If we go over to the spellbook here, you can see some other things that I have kind of from this class, but I didn't specifically go with on this build, but you can absolutely pick up. This build, with its kind of elemental focus, focusing on things like fire, ice, lightning, all that, could also go for the Conjure Elemental and Conjure Minor Elemental spells. Those could also be really fun to use as like kind of have your like elemental summons that could fit with the build. There's also Wall of Stone, which is also an evocation spell, as well as Wall of Ice. Counterspell obviously is a staple, but we'll be seeing that on the other builds, and also things like Shield and other kind of elemental spells that technically aren't evocation but could still work. You got things like Rare Sickness, Ice Knife, Burning Hands is evocation, but let's be honest, who uses it? Flaming Sphere, all sorts of things. Witch Bolt, but again, I mean, that I've been told Witch Bolt's good in this game, but I personally don't really like it that much. But yeah, you do have a few options to kind of give this build a little bit of different flavor. If you just want to go full blast, 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 you absolutely can, but you also have some utility options like summoning spells that would still be on theme if you decide to go with them. That's just some examples. So, back to the equipment. Again, pretty standard wizard affair here. We've got our obvious choice for a staff, especially in the endgame, the Marker Heshkir staff. The Marker Heshkir is going to give us a +1 bonus to spell save DC and attack rolls, which is just great for any spellcaster. It's also going to allow us to cast a spell without using a spell slot once per long rest, so we can use our big level 6 damaging spells twice per long rest, which is huge. It's a +2 quarterstaff, which doesn't really do anything for us in this particular build, but what we're really here for is even more elemental flavouring with Koreska's Favour, basically allowing us to imbue ourselves with one of the chromatic elements. You know, fire, ice, thunder, lightning, poison, all that sort of thing, and acid even. And when we do that, we gain a couple of extra spells that we can use without spell slots while the ability is up, and we can use this ability once per short rest, as well as being able to use our spells of that element, whether they come from the staff or not, to be able to inflict status conditions related to that spell. So fire will give us heat, I believe ice gives us chilled or encrusted with frost, thunder gives us reverberation, lightning gives us lightning charges, and yeah, there's a few other things. I believe acidic gives us like noxious fumes or something like that. Basically, if you're going to build a blaster elemental caster, this is the staff you want to go for. And in fact, any spellcaster would benefit from this, but I had to put this staff on just one of these 4 builds, and this is what I decided to go with. Again, all early game equipment that you could potentially pick from will be available in the description, so please check that out, because again, this is a late game option. Next up, the Hat of the Sharp Caster. Again, since we're focusing on being a blaster caster, let's try and get as much damage out of our spells as we possibly can. The Hat of the Sharp Caster basically gives us a great weapon fighting, or kind of something like Savage Attacker, but for spells. Whenever we roll a 1 or 2 on a damage die for a spell attack, that die is re-rolled once. I believe you need to have Gale in your party to get this, because I believe you get this from Tara. So even though I've not used Gale in this build, you absolutely could. Gale could be any one of these, and you can get the hat that way. But yeah, basically this is just going to make sure all of our big spells do more damage. Next up, the Shelter of Athkatla. Basically, this gives us advantage on saving throws against spells. If we're going to be blasting people, we want to make sure we don't get blasted back. This is going to help us, because one of the big problems you can have is when you're playing as a really powerful wizard, is suddenly having that power turned on your enemies. So being able to have advantage on saving throws against spells can be really, really unique. But again, the equipment here is interchangeable between the builds. Just choose whatever you want for this build out of the equipment that I'll be showing or that's listed in the description. This one also comes with Mirror Image, which can temporarily bump up our AC, so, you know, a bit extra defense. Next up, adding onto that spell power, we have the spell Might Gloves. When casting a spell that requires an attack roll, you can take a -5 penalty to the die, to the roll, to deal an additional 1d8 of damage. Basically, you can toggle this passive on or off to kind of gamble all in on being able to do more damage with your spells. So kind of like Great Weapon Master or Sharpshooter, but for spells. However, it is slightly worse, as rather than doing a fixed damage of 10, this only does a 1d8. So you could take a -5 penalty to the roll to only get an extra 1 point of damage. But for area of effect spells, this could work. But again, it is a spell that requires an attack roll, so not every spell will work with this. But again, something like Eldritch Blast can benefit from it. In fact, I need to do an Eldritch Blast build that kind of uses these gloves, because I can't remember if I have. I probably have. I've been doing this for nearly a year at this point. I probably have. But yeah, the Spell Might Gloves basically kind of fit the theme of going all in on just damage with Blaster Caster, so I decided to show it off here. And finally, the Boots of Speed. Being a Blaster Caster, yes, Sculpt Spells is going to kind of keep us from taking damage from our own AoEs. However, being able to use the Boots of Speed to be able to move away and out of melee range of enemies is going to be extremely important. At the end of the day, we are a squishy wizard, and we don't really have a reason to ever be at close range with this build. In very, very unique circumstances, maybe. And we're not really using our bonus action with this build, so with the ability Click Heals from the Boots of Speed, we essentially get the ability to dash as a bonus action similar to Rogue, but this version is actually slightly better, because not only does our movement speed double, our enemies have disadvantage on opportunity attacks against us. This basically means that not only are we going to be able to escape, we're going to be able to escape more reliably if we end up being face to face with a foe we don't want to be up against. So we're able to escape from melee range really easily and then blast from afar. Overall, I think it synergizes quite nicely with this kit. And finally, for our amulets, we have the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation. Whenever one of our cantrips deals acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, you can add your spellcasting modifier to the damage dealt. So basically, all of our kind of elemental cantrips here, like Shocking Grasp, Ray of Frost, or Firebolt, can now do extra damage equal to our spellcasting modifier, stacking that on top of the empowered Evocation feature to add our intelligence modifier. That's being added twice, making our cantrips actually extremely powerful. Unfortunately, Eldritch Blast will not work with this particular thing, but Eldritch Blast is more here as a utility option if you need a force damage option, which is something that can attack multiple enemies in a turn. So you still have a reason to use that, even though it might not actually be as powerful as your other options on this build. Again, no rings specifically here, because other than the exception of maybe I think 2 builds in this video, there's not really any specific ring that would absolutely benefit this build. So feel free to look in the description for kind of optional rings, but again can be spread across any of these builds. Same with cloaks and such like that. I'll have all the information you need in the description below. This whole outfit, by the way, has also been dyed in Boreal Blue, because a lot of people tend to ask me what I dye my outfits, and this one is Boreal Blue. Because, you know, magic is blue. You know, like when you get like magic in a video game, like it's always blue. The mana points are blue. Magic is just a blue thing, okay? Just whatever. But yeah, that's kind of my idea for what I think would kind of be a great full Power Blaster caster focused mainly on Evocation. Again, in a build where you don't in a party where you don't have multiple wizards, you definitely want to build something a bit more well-rounded, but this build does not give a shit. This build says, click a button, watch a lot of damage numbers happen, and it does it quite well. Again, you're going to want to pair this with other characters who can kind of take the heat off the wizard to allow them to do what they want to do. But, I mean, that's any D&D party, you don't really need me to tell you that. Quickly, we'll go over like the Kreska's favor stuff. So yeah, you've got Sizzling Cataclysm, which is Noxious Fumes and Acid and Poison. And, oh, this one's the Acid one. Yeah, Noxious Fumes. And then you also have, yeah, all this other stuff there. Deadly Evan Arsenic, that's the poison one. Yeah, gives them poison condition. Yeah, really, really fun build overall. Again, fairly simple, but for a build dedicated to capturing the spirit of the wizard, well, we just start blasting. Let's move on to the next build, which is moving my camera into the wall. There we go. Our Abjuration Wizard. I decided to go for Abjuration Wizard because, again, we're playing a wizard, an all-wizard party, which means squishy wizard hit points, which we don't necessarily want to deal with on every character. So being able to reduce damage across the whole party, as well as actually give us an option for being a more of a front-line combatant ourselves, that can actually take the heat off of our allies, is actually extremely valuable. So for this build, you're going to get a few things, namely your Arcane Ward, which is your main Abjuration feature. The residual magic of your spells forms a ward around you that protects you from harm. Each time you cast an Abjuration spell, the intensity of the ward increases by the amount of the spell's level. Each time you take damage, the ward blocks an amount of damage equal to its intensity, and its intensity decreases by 1. Basically, say, for example, here I have 13 charges of Arcane Ward. If someone attacks me, I'm going to take 13 less damage than I would have, and my charges drop to 12. But then if I cast an evocation spell, not an evocation spell, an abjuration spell, such as shield, very common option there, I'll gain more charges depending on the spell level used. So if I even wanted to upcast shield, even though it doesn't have any added effects, it would give me more charges. Because unfortunately, the amount of abjuration spells in this game is a little bit limited, unless you're at least for wizard. If you multiclass into cleric, which I've done multiple times with Abjuration Wizard in the past, you do get other options like sanctuary, which can really take this playstyle into the stratosphere. But I am a bit more limited here by a single class, so I had to look for ways to kind of make that work. Before we get into the spell choices though, let's have a look at the rest. We also have improved abjuration. Each time you take a short rest, the intensity of your arcane ward increases by an amount equal to your wizard level. So you're always going to have your wizard level's worth of arcane ward at least just by short resting, which means you can always have this ability up at least to start before you start casting your spells. We also have projected ward, which means now whenever a nearby ally takes damage and you have your active arcane ward up, you can sacrifice your ward to reduce the damage they take. So if your ally is about to take some serious damage, you can give up some charges to give them protection. Obviously, you'll have to build it up again after the fact, but hey, again, we're in a squishy wizard party. This is as close to a tank as I could get, and surprisingly enough, it does work. Speaking of being tanky, in order to compensate for the wizard's squishy hit die, our feat of choice here is the tough feat. Yeah, but you probably weren't expecting that, were you? Anyways, this allows our hit point maximum to increase by 2 for every level we've gained. So this takes us up, even though we only have a 14 in Constitution with this build, which may seem low, but again, I kind of wanted to kind of focus on Armour class more with this particular build, because that's a bit better for tanking in my opinion. We've got 16 in Dex and a 14 in Constitution, but with Tough, we're sitting at a comfortable 98 HP, which is pretty nice. Not the best, again, we are a squishy wizard, but with 18 AC here, thanks to our equipment, with the ability to bump it up more with things like Shield, which is again an Abjuration spell, which is in my reactions, as you can see here. Yeah, basically, we're going to have a lot of opportunities to kind of dodge attacks and tank for our team, allowing us to kind of mitigate damage across the party that way, because either we're getting attacked and we're dodging or using an arcane ward to reduce the damage, or our teammates are going to have their damage reduced thanks to projected ward. So yeah, this is basically the tank, which is why I kind of went with like a Dragonborn, because they're kind of tanky looking. Also, I'm really proud of this design because he looks like a kind of sagely old Giga Chad Dragonborn, and I friggin' love it. Kind of like I just love it. Anyways, so let's get into the actual equipment. Of course, I was going to use this on a build as well. We have the Staff of Spell Power. Basically does everything the Marker Heshkir does without the addition of Kreska's Favor, allowing us to use a spell without a spell slot once per long rest, gaining a +1 bonus to that DC and attack rolls, and is also a +2 quarterstaff. Basically, this is just here to facilitate high-powered, high-level spells, particularly one of our biggest abjuration spells that is really going to help this party, Globe of Invulnerability. Being able to use this twice per battle, thanks to the Staff of Spell Power, is going to be huge. I would even see maybe this build using the Spell Cleric's Amulet to get this 3 times. But we also have Arcane Recovery, which would also let us cast it more than once. And for this build, again, I kind of went for like frontline fighting almost, basically spells that aren't going to be too much of an issue to cast at close range. I've got the 2 summoning spells here to put more bodies on the field to protect the party even more. We've also got haste to be able to allow us to kind of move around the battlefield a bit quicker and get off multiple spells. And then we've got the Abjuration options. Protection from evil and good is an Abjuration spell, as is Mage Armour, which we'll be using anyway. Which, do I even have that cast yet? No, we have 18 AC and I haven't even cast Mage Armour yet. Let's take a look at that for a second. Yeah, so with a Mage Armour, we have 21 AC, which is really good for a wizard. So yeah, with this build, I decided to kind of stack AC boosting equipment, as well as kind of give us, again, the ability to kind of direct damage away from the rest of the party, being able to either make us completely invulnerable or summon more things to do so. Because again, there's not a lot of good Abjuration spells in this game, but we do have things like Stone Skin, which is an Abjuration spell that will make it so we basically have Barbarian's damage resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage as long as we can maintain concentration. We also have things like Banishment to temporarily take enemies out of a fight. We have close range cantrips like Acid Splash and Poison Spray, as well as Shocking Grasp, Magic Missile, which can work at any range, as well as Glyph of Warding, which is also an Abjuration spell that works nicely, giving us different elemental damage options. But yeah, and we also have things like Hold Person. Again, if we're going to be in close range, we might as well keep our enemies pinned down. And there's other odd spells here, like Protection from Energy and Arcane Lock, that are here because they are Abjuration spells. And giving ourselves a resistance to a particular damage type can be nice, as well as Arcane Lock just being fun flavor-wise, but again, they're all here really to just fuel our Arcane Ward when we so choose. But yeah, let's get into the equipment. Like I said, I already went over the Staff of Spell Power. Let's jump into the actual clothing. First up, the Circlet of Mental Anguish, which I don't think I've ever actually featured on the channel before. When an enemy fails a Charisma, Intelligence, or Wisdom saving throw against one of your spells or cantrips, you regain 1d4 hit points. I mean, this may have some usage applications depending on what comes up. This was kind of just an interesting thing that again can be moved around to the different builds if you so desire, but I wanted to point it out because we are going to be dealing out a lot of saving throws across all of these builds, so I wanted to make a specific note of this, and again giving ourselves a little bit of healing on a build that's probably going to be taking slightly more damage, being at the front line. This can work, but again you want to make sure you absolutely have those spells that force those saving throws, but again I mainly just wanted to point this one out. Next up, Cloak of Protection, +1 armor class and saving throws. We want as much AC as we can, and this is basically free AC. Speaking of free AC, the Robe of the Weave, giving us a +1 bonus to spell to save DC and attack rolls, as well as whenever we succeed a saving throw against a spell, we regain hit points. Again, perfect for a build that wants to take hits, as well as a +2 to our armor class overall. Again, perfect for what I'm going for here. Next up, the Daredevil Gloves. We gain a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls, and as well as our ranged spell attacks are made as melee spell attacks whenever we are adjacent to a hostile creature. We're most likely going to be getting into the thick of things here, so if we do decide to put ranged spells on this build, we're not going to have to worry about our positioning too much. We're not going to be taking disadvantage to use those spells. Again, the spells I've taken here on these builds are just kind of guidelines, like these are just some fun thematic things you can throw on, again, to make each build unique, but if you wanted to go for more powerful ranged damage options, but again, to play this build in close range, this is going to really help you out. As well as the Evasive Shoes, giving us another +1 to our armor class, as well as a +1 to acrobatics, which can help dodge some nasty spells. Next up over here, we have the Psychic Spark. Since Magic Missile is going to probably be one of our best spells for this build, because again, it works at any range and cannot miss, I decided to throw on the Psychic Spark to allow us to shoot an additional dart whenever we cast Magic Missile, so we just get more consistent damage. It does also give us a usage of Magic Missile at level 1, but obviously we don't need that. This is just here to add that extra dart. As well as we have the Ring of Protection to give us another +1 to our armor class and saving throws. Maybe a bit overkill, especially since the way you get this one can be a bit tricky unless you know what you're doing. Specifically, I'd definitely recommend checking the wiki page for this one. But yeah, definitely could be helpful. Again, that 21 AC is a really nice number to have on a build like this. So yeah, that is kind of the whole thing. Again, the whole point of this build is to kind of basically be able to mitigate damage across for yourself and the whole party, control the battle, put more bodies on the battlefield using the summons, and then kind of play around with some tricky strategies using things like haste, hold person, banishment, global invulnerability, all of that good stuff. So a bit of battlefield control, a bit of tanking, and a bit of support for the party. So overall, I think it has a pretty interesting and unique place amongst this group. Next up, we have my third build, which is the Divination Wizard. Again, for a build that's focused on team play and a video that's focused on working as a team, I kind of wanted to focus on abilities that do actually affect your teammates as well. And as such, I've gone for Divination here. I knew I wanted one of these builds to kind of focus on, saving throw spells. And while obviously Enchantment or Illusion Wizard would make sense for this, I think when you're playing a character, you actually want to be able to have fun with the subclass features. And my problem with both Enchantment and Illusion is that they don't actually get any of their really good features basically until level 10, and don't get me wrong, Split Enchantment and Illusory Self are both extremely good abilities, but I wanted something that was consistently fun the whole way down. And in this case, Divination Wizard is exactly that. Divination Wizard gives you one of the most overpowered abilities in the game, Portent, basically allowing you to, after each long rest, you gain 2 random Portent die. During the day, you can use a reaction to change the die of any attack roll or saving throw rolled near you to one of those die. So for how this ability works is basically, say I roll my 2 Portent die after a long rest, and I get a 2 and an 18. I've done this explanation 100 times, but for those of you who are new, here we go. Basically, if I am about to get hit by a fireball, and I fail my dexterity saving throw, I get like a 4, I can change it to my 18 that I rolled earlier and succeed the saving throw. Or if I'm casting something like Slow on an enemy and they are about to succeed the saving throw, maybe they rolled like a 19, I can change their saving throw to a 2, meaning that they fail and are affected by the Slow spell. That's how Portent works, and you get that ability right at level 2, meaning that you get to have fun with this feature right away. But of course, we also have other things that are actually really fun. We have Expert Divination, giving us 3 Portent die per long rest, and whenever we take a short rest we receive a prophecy, basically like a mini little side objective to be able to get another Portent die each short rest. So we're able to keep this ability fueled up by completing these fun little side objectives throughout our play, which I think is really, really fun. I think it's a really interesting and fun build that feels good to use throughout your whole progression of the game. Again, Divination can be any sort of caster you like. It can be a blaster, it can be a support, it can be almost like an enchanter or illusion or illusionist type deal. You got a lot of options available to you, but this fun, really powerful ability being present throughout the whole playthrough rather than just getting some decent or good abilities right towards the end, I think this is the better class to go with if you want to really capture what can make a wizard fun throughout a whole playthrough. And as for our feat for this build, I've gone with Dual Wielder, because I've decided to go a bit of a Cazador route. I've got the Woe Staff, which gives us a +1 bonus to spell save DC and spell attack rolls, and again, a lot of our spells, as you can see on the bottom, are going to have a spell save DC, so we want that. Also, any creatures that are affected by my when the creatures affected by your spells fail any associated saving throws, you gain a d4 of hit points. We also get the extra usage of Blight as well, and also this is a bound weapon, meaning that it cannot be knocked out of our hands. But with Dual Wielder, we can pair this with Rhapsody, Cazador's dagger. Gain a +1 bonus to attack rolls, damage, and spell save DC for every foe you slay, up to a maximum of +3. Again, the whole point of this specific build, was to get our spell save DC as high as possible to be able to use these devastating effects. And thanks to the fact that basically with the staff and the knife, we can get a total of +4 to our spell save DC, that's extremely powerful. It's mainly just here to, and it's also extremely fashionable. I mean, look at this outfit. It's brilliant. But yeah, that's kind of like the fun, kind of unique strategy I wanted to go for here, using high spell save DC to focus on spells that require saving throws. So, we have things like Eye Bite, Flesh to Stone, Dominate Person, Slow, which is my personal favourite concentration choice, Hold Monster, Hold Otto's Irresistible Dance, Fear, Telekinesis, and we also have the proper divination spells like See Invisibility, Detect Thoughts, Third Eye Dark Vision, and Third Eye See Invisibility, which both come from our subclass. And also I've gone for things like Greater Invisibility and Sleet Storm as well. Also, yes, True Strike is here because it is Divination. I know, but it's kind of funny that this gets to be here. Basically, again, this is kind of this is a build mainly focused on control. Kill a few enemies to really bump up that spell save DC, and then exert complete control over the battlefield. Again, slow and hold, and any of the hold spells are going to be extremely valuable here. Also, being able to do things like greater invisibility, perhaps on another one of our builds to make them a bit better at kind of sneaking around, I think this can work out quite nicely. So this is kind of the playstyle that I would go for here with this particular build. Again, we've had 3 completely different playstyles. This one is all focused on battlefield control and adverse effects. We have a blaster DPS, and we also have a frontline tank. I think I'm actually kind of impressed I was able to do such distinct playstyles with 3 wizards. Feels quite fun. But anyways, let's get into the equipment. We have the Hood of the Weave, which is going to give us a +2 bonus to our spell save DC and attack rolls. Again, that spell save DC buff is what we really want. Same with the Cloak, giving us a +1 bonus to our spell save DC with the Cloak of the Weave. Also gives us Absorb Elements, which just kind of lets us be a bit tankier and then deal a little bit of elemental damage on our next attack. That's not really what we're here for. We mainly just want that +1 to spell save DC. I've also gone for the Robe of Supreme Defenses. While concentrating, you can add your spellcasting ability modifier to your saving throws and gain a +1 bonus to our armor class. Pretty much all of these spells require a concentration in some way, shape, or form, so that's going to give us a big buff to our saving throws to maintain those spells, as well as making us a bit harder to hit with that little buff to our armor class. As well as I've gone for the Quick Spell Gloves. These are just kind of more powerful kind of spellcaster gloves that I wanted to show off. Not necessarily a cornerstone of this build, but could be useful. Cantrips that cost an action can cost a bonus action instead. This effect can be used once per short rest. Basically, you toggle this on, and the next cantrip you cast can be cast as a bonus action. So, you know, get that True Strike up as a bonus action, and then your next spell can be rolled with advantage if it is an attack roll. So, I mean, come on, it's the best I could get. Anyways, no, but this is kind of a fun glove. Again, you can throw this on any of these builds that you like. Maybe the Blaster Caster if you decide you want to do something a bit different there. And finally, the Disintegrating Nightwalkers. Again, with a lot of these control spells, especially something like Sleet Storm, you may create surfaces that could be slipped up on, as well as you don't want to be knocked prone or slip up on surfaces that are already there if you're concentrating on a spell, because that obviously ends your concentration. So Disintegrating Nightwalkers are basically going to prevent that, also giving you Misty Step to be able to teleport away from danger and maybe sit up in a place that's hard to reach for your enemies while keeping concentration of your spells and raining down hell from above could be really useful. So I think these are a pretty damn good option for a build like this. As for our accessories, we have the Amulet of the Devout. You gain a +2 bonus to your spell save DC. This is mainly used for clerics because it gives you like an additional use of Channel Divinity, but for us, we mainly just want that extra +2 to our spell save DC. With everything that we have here, basically all of our spells are going to be impossible to save against. And finally, the first ring of this video, we've got the Ring of Mental Inhibition. Whenever a foe fails a saving throw against one of your spells, they gain mental fatigue, which means they have an even harder time of resisting your spells. They can even take a bit of psychic damage if you stack up enough charges. So yeah, basically, again, the whole point of this build is to just be completely battlefield control. I think if you want to, in a large encounters with a lot of enemies, slow is definitely your best control option, but if you're up against big, dangerous bosses, something like Hold Monster or Person can be really, really useful there. And big spread spells like Fear, Hypnotic Pattern. In fact, if we actually have a look, I do have some more here. There's a lot of things you could go for here, utility options as well. There's a lot of things like Blink, Misty Step, Crown of Madness, Phantasmal Force, Phantasmal Killer, Confusion. You know, you have a ton of options here, but I mainly just kind of wanted to focus on, like, you know, just battlefield control. And again, this could be an Enchanter. If you wanted to swap out Divination for Enchanter here, well, you'd lose out on the really fun effects of the Portent Dive that allow you to just manipulate reality around you. You could get that split enchantment, which means things that only, like something like Hold Monster or Dominate Person that would normally only target one target, can actually target two, giving you much more battlefield control that way. But I honestly think that Divination just works out better for battlefield control as well, being able to tweak pretty much any role around you to your advantage. So in my opinion, I prefer Divination, but again, I could make builds for the other subclasses later as well, if you guys want. And finally, the one I've been saving for last. This is definitely the most unique build amongst this party in this video. I really wanted to go out of the box for this one, give you a wizard build that I don't think any of you would have seen coming a million miles away. So here's the Transmutation Wizard. Yes, I know. Okay, maybe you were expecting Transmutation. But again, it's another unique playstyle that wizard can have. Rather than focusing on just spellcasting, we now take the full use of the alchemy system into the equation, allowing us to gain immense power from being able to create fit potions of various effects. But I didn't just want to do that. I wanted to go all in on this concept. We're not just going to be making potions, we're drinking them too. We're not just an alchemist, we're not just a transmuter, We're a brewer, and we also brew alcohol. This is the Drunken Wizard. He is essentially going to be here to be able to craft unique elixirs, potions, and effects, and grenades to be able to use for your allies or against your enemies. And there's quite a lot of fun transmutation spells in this game that actually kind of lent into the kind of vibe of this character. So let's have a look at what Transmuter gives us. It gives us experimental alchemy. As long as we succeed a DC 15 medicine check whenever we create something with alchemy, we actually can create 2 as long as we succeed the check. Now, since medicine is a wisdom spell, but is a wisdom skill, I have decided to pump up our wisdom a little bit more. Giving us a higher chance to succeed that check, as well as getting us medicine proficiency from the wizard kind of list here to give us a +7 to medicine checks, meaning that we should be able to get that check off pretty much all the time. We also get a few other fun things like Shape Changer to change ourselves into a blue jay with Polymorph, and also the ability Transmuter's Stone, which is going to allow us to create a unique stone that we can either use for ourselves or for our allies to be able to give them a unique effect, such as being resistant to a certain elemental damage type, giving them extra movement speed, giving them dark vision, or my personal favorite, giving them proficiency in Constitution saving throws. This is a pretty big one. If you have one of these builds and it's pretty reliant on Concentration saving throws, having our Transmuter here give them Transmuter's Stone Constitution can actually really help to maintain those concentration saves, because we're not taking like a dip into Fighter or Sorcerer here. So overall, I think between Transmuter Stone and the fact that we get to make full use of the alchemy system, again, it gives us another interesting way of approaching the game with this build, because we're going to be able to go on that kind of side quest to find alchemy ingredients and make new potions, grenades, what have you, as we go throughout the game. So while Portent gets its little side quests to get the Portent die, the Divination Wizard, we have a little side quest to grab alchemy ingredients and make new things. I think, again, it's just another unique playstyle to add to the party, and the transmutation spells are extremely fun. We get things like, the typical utility spells, which I didn't end up taking on our other casters, so things like Longstrider, Enhanced Sleep, Expeditious Retreat. We also get things like Enlarge, Reduce, Featherfall, and, we also get some other things, which aren't transmutation spells, but hey, both Haste and Slow are transmutation spells. That's kind of fun, as well as Blink, and, what else do we have here? Polymorph, that's another really goofy fun one. But we also get some other interesting spells, because again, if we're making these kind of like grenades and all this, perhaps we can make acid and poison too. So I've gone for things like Poison Spray, Ray of Sickness, Acid Splash, and Melf's Acid Arrow, as well as Stinking Cloud, to create a cloud of gas so nauseating it prevents creatures from taking actions. That's our alcoholic breath. The only thing is the stat distribution on this build is fucking whack. We have 15 Constitution, 12 Dex, 19 Strength, 20 Int, and 16 Wisdom. So yeah, our AC on this build, I will readily admit, even with Mage Armor, it's not great. It's 15, which isn't the lowest it could possibly be, but we're definitely going to want to keep this guy out of the forefront of combat. But hey, that's what the Abjuration Wizard is for, and it's also technically what the Divination Wizard is for, because that can help with our saving throws as well, and our enemies' attack rolls, and being able to take enemies out of the fight. Anyway, so we've got a lot of ways of kind of protecting this build, and again, the alchemy system is going to give us a bunch of benefits as well. But here's the thing. If our main method of combat here is going to be throwing grenades and such at our enemies, then we need to do a lot of damage with throwing. So I've gone with Tavern Brawler on this build. Again, if we're playing kind of this like a brewery alcohol wizard, getting Tavern Brawler makes perfect sense. That's also why I picked Dwarf. As well as being able to use, so now that we can use Tavern Brawler to throw things with our strength modifier and deal added damage, as well as getting an added bonus to our attack rolls, we now are extremely effective at throwing our grenades and actually hit it. So basically we can throw a grenade, get massive damage on the actual hit itself, and then residual effects and damage from the actual effect of the potion of the grenade when it explodes. So yeah, overall, pretty interesting way of approaching a wizard build, at least in my opinion. But let's have a look at the rest of it. Now, our wizard staff is a little bit shorter than most wizard staffs. We have the Club of Hill Giant Strength, setting our strength to 19, which is what's going to allow us to do all these really far throws. It's also going to allow us to jump around as well and kind of be quite like dexterous in combat, being able to maneuver around the arena quite easily, which combines nicely with things like Longstrider, Enhanced Sleep, and all that sort of thing, and Expeditious Retreat as well. There's just a lot of fun things we can do with this build that all kind of feels on theme, and Haste as well. We're just a fast little drunk man. Speaking of being drunk, let's get into the equipment, because there's obviously some that work here. We have the pointy hat. Again, we don't actually have a party face on this build, but the pointy hat is going to allow us to use our intelligence modifier for persuasion checks. So, without needing to actually take charisma with any of our builds, we now have someone who is the face of the party. And of course it would be the happy drunk. Why wouldn't it? Speaking of drunk, we have the Drunken Cloth. While drunk, you have advantage on Constitution saving throws, and you gain temporary hit points equal to your Constitution modifier at the start of each turn, so we get a little bit of tankiness here. I'll quickly jump over to the accessories as well to point out our other piece of drunk equipment, which is the Amulet of the Drunkard. While wearing this amulet, you regain 2 to 8 hit points per turn while drunk. Additionally, you increase the duration of your inebriation by 5 rounds, allowing us to be drunk for longer. Unfortunately, this is bugged at the moment, but it should be fixed in the next patch. While wearing this amulet, you only gain that 2 to 8 hit point healing on the first turn of drunkenness. You don't actually get it on every subsequent turn, but that should be fixed later. I also kind of went for the Gloves of Missile Snaring, taking a little bit of inspiration from like a drunken master style of combat. While we're not a monk, we can get a monkish ability, allowing us to intercept missiles from ranged weapon attacks, reducing their damage by 1d10 plus our dexterity modifier. So we basically just get to be a little bit more tanky against like bows and crossbows and such like that. Again, we're kind of just like maybe we're just getting so lucky that we're kind of dodging the brunt of the damage as we're kind of drunkenly stumbling around the battlefield. And finally, the Bone Spike Boots, giving us a +1 bonus to armor class and saving throws as long as we are not wearing armor or holding a shield. We're not. Our jump distance is also increased, again playing into that fun little aspect of this build, as well as we get Brutal Leap, which allows us to leap at a target and possibly knock them prone as a bonus action, which can be extremely useful for this whole team, so I quite like having that ability here. And again, being this like stumbling drunk that's like dodging and jumping and like partying around the battlefield as they start throwing alcohol and grenades and like Molotov cocktails and shit around. It's just fun. It's a ton of fun. You get to play with some fun spells and abilities. You get to turn into a blue jay for some reason. It's just chaos. It's fun, and it's a unique take on the wizard, but I've personally not seen anyone else do. Perhaps they have. I don't know. I don't watch a lot of other people's videos on builds because I don't want to accidentally plagiarize. But yeah, we also have powerful control options like slow as well on this build, and haste if we want to buff up our allies or ourselves as well. But yeah, the whole thing is just being able to throw real good and brew real good. We make a lot of fun stuff. And in fact, our last little piece of equipment here, the Ring of Flinging, is going to give us a throwing boost, allowing our actual thrown objects to do a little bit more damage. But yeah, that is the final build. That is Transmutation Wizard. Overall, I think we get quite a fun little piece of kit here. We even get resistance to poison as a dwarf, which is fun. Again, allowing us to take a few more drinks. But yeah, overall, I'm really, really proud of how this turned out. Especially this build on the end here, because I think it's just a fun little capstone to the whole video. But I actually think my ability, again, I don't like tooting my own horn that much, but I kind of have to with this one. Because I think taking 4 wizards and making 4 completely distinct playstyles in BG3 was kind of tricky to do, but I was really, really happy that I was actually able to pull it off. And I think you can all agree that some of these concepts are quite fun. Again, I feel like, I've kind of gone over this already, but a lot of the equipment can be exchanged back and forth. You can kind of mix and match the spells a bit more, mix and match the equipment, and obviously you could play other subclasses with a similar kind of idea in mind, and still get by. I am an idiot who forgot to record combat footage. I got to the end of the video there. I was kind of like about to just kind of do my like end of video discussion, and I was like, oh yeah, you'll see on the combat footage I didn't record any combat footage. So I've just finished recording said combat footage, and I'm now going to be telling you about it. As you can see, we had some pretty effective combat going on. The kind of damage mitigation was obvious right off the bat, thanks to Globe of Invulnerability, which yes, I know is a level 6 spell, but I really did want to show off the maximum potential of this party. And Globe of Invulnerability allowed us to get a great start, being able to set up our concentration spells without too much worry and get some damage off against our enemies who had to come across our kind of zone of control. Immediately being able to cast slow as well made it so our enemies had a very hard time reaching us, being able to take, and once stopping them from getting close enough to take advantage of the Globe of Invulnerability for themselves. Combining that with Grease to reduce their movement speed even more and potentially knock them prone, and then again later on using things like Stinking Cloud, Hold Monster, and a bunch of other stuff to basically exert complete dominance over the battlefield while blasting away with powerful blaster spells thanks to our Evocation Wizard, and then being able to use summon spells as well to add in a little bit of extra damage. I mean, you can see how effective this party can be. It's actually probably some of the least amount of damage I've ever taken in kind of like testing for these builds. In some of my other battles that I did, if enemies were able to get some early kind of like attacks off, and then I deliberately didn't use like setup things like Global Vulnerability in that case, yeah, the party can be in a bit of danger if they're not able to set up quick enough. However, if they can set up, or if they're able to get the jump quite ahead of their enemies ahead of time, like you see in this combat footage, then these builds can absolutely shred. Unfortunately, I didn't really have the time to get all of the alchemy ingredients together to like really get into the whole like grenade throwing kind of thing, because again, I need to get this video done on time, and I didn't really have time to kind of like get all that sorted. I mean, I could have modded some stuff in now that I think about it, but honestly, would have taken a bit too long. But you can see that even without the grenade kind of throwing aspect, the drunken build can absolutely kind of applies to battlefield control with things like Stinking Cloud and the like. But again, you can also like I said, throw the grenades and create elixirs to do all sorts of things. So you can have a ton of fun with it. But yeah, no, I think overall this party composition is extremely solid. I think you're going to get a lot out of this if you decide to go with it. And yeah, again, I hope you all enjoyed this video, because I really, really did enjoy making it. Right, that is going to do it from me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.